All right, question of the week, MBLEx review number 42. Our question is, what structure lies between the spinous and transverse processes of the vertebral column? Is it going to be A, the body, B, the facets, C, the lamina groove, or D, the vertebral foramen? One more time. What structure lies between the spinous and transverse processes of the vertebral column? Is it going to be body, facets, lamina groove, or the vertebral foramen? So I'll give you a few moments to work on this one, and then we'll go ahead and head over to the explanation. All right, so in the community tab, I asked you what structure lies between the spinous and transverse processes of the vertebral column. And we had a great turnout here. We had 43 votes. 9% of you said it was going to be the body. 44% of you said it was going to be the facets. 33% of you said it was going to be the lamina groove. And then 14% of you said it was going to be the vertebral foramen. And then thank you to the 13 people who liked this post. So a majority of you went with the facets. So let's see if this is the structure that lies between the spinous and transverse processes of the vertebral column. So first, let's take a look at one of our vertebrae. And if you see right here, here is the body, and here is the transverse process and the spinous process. And we can definitely see that the body is nowhere near the middle or lies between the transverse and spinous process. So we can go ahead and get rid of the body. Now let's take a look at a different structure here. On this picture, again, we can see the body, which is nowhere near the spinous and transverse process, or rather nowhere near the middle of the spinous and transverse processes of the vertebrae. And so we can definitely get rid of the body. But here's another structure I want to bring your attention to. And so look at this yellow area. This is going to be our spinal cord. And so if you look at this picture, you can see that the spinal cord is housed in between the vertebrae, and it's going to be within the vertebral foramen. So this is going to be the hole within the vertebrae. And this is what's going to house and protect the spinal cord. Now, this does not fall in the middle of the spinous process and transverse process, and so that one is not the correct answer either. And so we're looking for the structure that lies between the spinous and transverse processes of the vertebral column, and we're left with either the facets or the lamina groove. So we have a 50-50% chance of getting this answer correct now. So let's take a look at these different structures. And so if you look here we have the facets, and the facets are going to be superior facets, and then we also have inferior facets as well. So here's the inferior, and let's take a different look here at a different picture so we can clearly see it. And so this is going to be our superior facets, and this is going to be our inferior facets. And if there's another vertebrae here down below, the superior facet is going to connect to this inferior facet. This is going to create one of our joints. And if you remember, this is going to be our zygapophyseal joint, which creates a gliding joint. I'd encourage you to make sure you understand that before you go into the MBLEx, because that is something that definitely showed up in one of the practice questions. So now looking at it, here is that gliding joint, and this is the zygapophyseal joint. Now this structure is not really within the middle of the spinous process and the transverse process. What is in the middle is this area, which is known as our vertebral arch. So this area that lies in between our spinous process and our transverse process is known as our vertebral arch. Now, it's also known as our lamina. So now let's take a look at a different picture here, and we actually have to zoom in to see this nice and clearly. And so what you'll notice here is here's our vertebral arch from our transverse process to our spinous processes. You have this area right here, and this entire area is known as our lamina groove, this entire space in between. Now what's really interesting is we have nerves that run out of our vertebral column, and they're going to extend to the rest of our body, right? Our peripheral nerves. Now, what's really interesting is sometimes if one of these vertebrae catches one of those nerves and we have some type of impingement, a neurologist will come in here and they'll cut off a piece of this lamina, and it's called a laminectomy. And so they'll give that nerve some room, and it's not being impinged anymore because they take a piece of that bone out and to take some of that pressure off of that impingement. And if you remember, this area is where we have our transversal spinalis group. That's going to be our multifidi, rotorers. That is going to be within this entire area of the lamina groove. So the correct answer here is lamina groove. 33% of you got this answer correct. Now, if you did not get this answer correct, I would encourage you to jump back in your textbooks and make sure you understand this information before you go into the MBLEx. And if you need additional help, I would encourage you to check out my Patreon page where I dive much deeper into this content. Now, if you need some one-on-one help, I would encourage you to book me for some tutoring, and there's going to be a link in the description below where you can access my website and see all of my availability. And whenever you're available and ready for some tutoring, just make sure to book me and we'll definitely work on this material together. All right, and hopefully get you better prepared for the MBLEx. All right, y'all have a wonderful week ahead, and I will see you in the next question of the week. Y'all take care.